A big welcome and a big thank you for those presenters who have agreed to spend part of the morning and early afternoon with the students. I will talk about minimum actuarial education standards, and I'm happy that people who got involved in developing the standards are here in the call. Let me extend a warm welcome to Moses Mutuli, who was then the president of TASC. I will also discuss how to use education, experience, and professional certification to satisfy the actual demand in Kenya and also in the region. Let's go to the next slide. So the presentation is the first, that one. The presentation is organized to cover these 6 items. And you will see that the minimum education standard covers a lot of areas, but I've teased out areas that are of interest to students. There are other sections that would be interesting more to the lecturers. And so I want to speak to the students, and I want to speak also to those people who are from the industry. Next. Now, in terms of introduction, I think we are all aware that the degree programs in actuarial science in Kenya and the region started around the year 2000. But prior to that, a number of people went through actuarial studies, mainly abroad. So there's been significant development in terms of training people at degree level and of course beyond after their graduation. There are a number of stakeholders that we really need to think about. We have the students, their professional associations, which I consider very, very important, the regulators, and I hope they are represented here, mainly IRA and RBA, who have given significant support to the training of actuaries in Kenya. And of course, the actuarial societies, TASC, and of course, the academy. We will see how these stakeholders come into the development and realization of the minimum education standards. We have program accreditation that we consider very important. And this is what the minimum education standards aim to achieve. From TASC, from the Society of Actuaries, and from IFOA. We have had collaborations and partners. We have, of course, the Insurance Regulatory Authority Scholarship, which every year takes candidates to the Bayers Business School. This has made significant contribution to training of actuaries in Kenya. And as we discuss this subject, it is important to know that the qualification required to achieve this is quite high, and therefore students need to prepare themselves early enough so that when the call is made, they will then be able to compete. We have had award schemes, and the most important one that I want to name, and this is a message to the industry, is the Prudential Actuarial Support Scheme. We call it PASS, which awards $800 to each student, the best 3 students at the University of Nairobi who have excelled. They have extended this to Ghana, Nigeria, and Zambia. The importance of this is that students need to compete and see sense in that competition and being excellent in class. The message, therefore, is that other industry players need to come up with similar schemes, spread it across universities in the region. Next slide. Now, it is important to know the process that we undergo when a curriculum is developed. And this is also embedded in the minimum education standard that TASC did develop. So in Kenya, and of course in the region, the development starts with the needs assessment, market survey, and situational analysis. The ones that are marked in red are steps that would require the participation of students and other stakeholders. And it is important that people get involved in this development process so that their ideas, their experience will be taken into account. The next step would then be for the university lecturers developing the curriculum to go through the design stage. And there are a number of factors to be taken into account that the regulators have spelled out. And I will talk about the regulators in the region. Step 3 is the stakeholders' involvement. And here we must show that there is local and international experts, either from professional bodies or from other universities externally. This stage is also important. And when you look at step 1, normally what we do is to send survey questions to be answered online. And so 1 and 3 are steps that would then involve all of us who are in the call, whether students or people in industry. And those 2 steps, we must show evidence that there was participation from stakeholders. Otherwise, the regulators would not give approval to the program. Step 2 now is at the university level, where the program is discussed and you take it through approvals from different stages. Step 5 is the peer review and assessment by experts that are appointed now by the regulator. And in the case of Kenya, the regulator is the Commission for University Education, which we denote by Q. In Tanzania, it is Tanzania Commission for Universities. And in Uganda, it is the National Commission for Higher Education. So depending on the peer review and assessment process, step 6 then gives the national regulator a chance to make a decision on whether to give approval for the accreditation of the program or to reject it or return it for more adjustments to be made. There is a new step that has just come into play, and this is optional. Now, if a program is supported by a funding agency, the funding agency will then require to see whether accreditation by the Inter-University Council for East Africa, AAEA, which is a regional body for EAC, is granted. And this is done once the national regulator has given approval, and then you take it through those stages, similar stages of going through the peer reviewers and then approval given. For most of the programs offered locally, step 7 is number 1, new, and also optional. The next slide. Now, task, as we said, develop the minimum education standards, and of interest to students. Of course, there are aspects of the standard that are of importance to the lecturers. So I've picked 10 areas that apply to the students. And the 10 learning areas are as listed. I have not given examples, but we all know what would go into foundations of mathematics. You must then study things like calculus, ordinary differential equations, numerical analysis, and all those kind of things. Then we have statistics, economics, finance, financial systems, assets, data and systems, and all the rest. According to the standard, a curriculum developed as we discussed in 2 should cover all these 10 areas for it to be considered to satisfy the needs of our task. And I've indicated that the details of these learning areas are available in that document that you can request and have access to. Next, I have, and this is my own personal idea, I have added a few soft skills. They may not be that soft. And these are things that would add value to any learner who goes through the university. I must emphasize here that the university environment is important. It must expose learners to creative and innovative learning environment, so that when you meet with people, with students studying other subjects, you are able to discuss and learn from them and exchange ideas. We would want graduates to have very good communication skills. Most universities do not stress the need for learners to adopt internationally accepted languages. Most universities think that excellence in English language is sufficient. This is what I call here as a joke, and I say a person who speaks only one language, one international language, and Kiswahili is not one of them, is like one who is half blind. You therefore need to think about developing basic knowledge in French, in Spanish, so that later on you can be internationally competitive. I only know of one university in Kenya that, has adopted this. Try to add into the scheme of things that you then study, even on your own, ethics, values, and governance. The other one is the computation skills and the statistical learning. I call it statistical learning because data science has become important. The way we deal with AI, the way we deal with big data is important. It's good to start from proficiency in Excel, SPSS, the R and Python. And R and Python are important, especially when you want to understand things in data science. Actually, those two languages are what would be required. Entrepreneurship, and of course, I've talked about the data science aspect. These soft skills are important so that students graduate with other skills beyond what is covered in the syllabus. But if they are also in the curriculum, the better. The next one. I will not spend a lot of time on this, but the standards also talks about assessment and accreditation of actuarial science programs in Kenya, and I think this would be extended to the region. Now, there are qualifications that are required for a program to be assessed and accredited. We want to know what kind of students do we admit. Mathematical knowledge is important in the training of actuaries. And so skills in mathematics are important, and that is why we suggested that universities should admit students with a B+ in mathematics, but also a B in English. Now, this, of course, is subject to discussion, and examinations vary from one year to another. We are now moving to the CBC curriculum, and of course, when we get to that, we'll have to look at what to include. So let me now conclude. The next slide. So what have I said so far? What I've said is that the minimum education standards developed by the Actuarial Society of Kenya took into account what happens internationally in the US, in Canada, in Britain, in South Africa, and all those countries. We consider this a well-researched kind of document that is important for students, important for the universities, the regulators, and the industry. And the aim here is for us to produce people, graduates, products who are fit, for industry. The second thing that I want to say is that actuarial students associations at the universities levels and the umbrella one is asked are very, very important, and they should be made active. My proposition here is that all the universities should have actuarial students association that would then interact with industry, interact with other universities, invite speakers to come and talk to them. And this is the way we started, and I think we need to make it a lot more active. Industry-university partnership is quite important, and this is something that we should work towards strengthening. I have included a recent paper written by Farah Ahmed et al., and I think this is something that would, especially those in industry, it would be good to have a look at this. I'm saying that excellence in actuarial studies is very important. You should go to the university to excel and work hard. Register for professional papers early enough. And I remember that we have had an MOU with IFOA to enable students register early enough. So this is possible. If you are able to graduate with a degree, but also have passed some professional papers, it will be great. Having passed 3, 4, 5 by the time you graduate is a big plus. Develop new talents through what I call soft skills, whether it's through languages, whether it's through computational skills, whether it's through governance, ethics, values. That is important. Before I go to the last one, mentorship is also very important. We have so many qualified actuaries, and I know some are in this call. Please mentor these young people. I know there are too many, but mentorship is what would help us develop further. And for the young ones, try to identify your passion